The blue planet of Aquaria looked like a jewel from space. Unlike Earth with its patches of green and brown land, Aquaria was almost all ocean. Only a few small islands broke the endless blue surface. Jiho Park stared out the window of the space shuttle as it began to enter the atmosphere. He had never seen so much water in one place. As a marine biologist from Earth, he was used to oceans, but nothing like this. Aquaria's ocean covered 98% of the planet's surface. Amazing, isn't it? Asked Captain Do-hyun, who stood beside him. The perfect place for our first major contact with the Mer people. Jiho nodded. He had spent years studying Earth's sea life, but now he would be one of the first humans to study alien sea creatures. Even better, he would meet the Mer, the intelligent species that lived in Aquaria's vast oceans. The Galactic Confederation had discovered the Mer only 2 years ago. The Mer had just learned how to travel in space, which meant they could join the community of space-traveling species. Earth had joined the Confederation 5 years earlier, so humans were still new to space politics. Remember, said Captain Do-hyun, we need to make a good impression. Earth still needs strong allies in the Confederation. Jiho understood the importance. Humans were seen as newcomers with little to offer the more advanced species. This mission to Aquaria was a chance to show that humans had valuable skills. The shuttle landed on a floating platform that served as the main Confederation base on Aquaria. Jiho felt the warm, salty air hit his face as the door opened. A group of aliens waited to greet them. Among them were several Mer, easily spotted by their shimmering blue-green skin that looked like fish scales. One of the Mer stepped forward. Welcome to Aquaria. I am Tae-young, your guide during your stay. His voice had a musical quality, and though he spoke perfect English, there was a slight bubbling sound behind his words. Jiho was amazed by Tae-young's appearance. The Mer had webbed hands, large eyes that seemed to change color in the light, and gill slits on the sides of his neck. He wore what looked like a special suit that kept his skin moist while he was above water. Thank you for having us, said Captain Do-hyun with a small bow. We look forward to learning about your world. Tae-young led them to their quarters, a series of rooms built on the edge of the platform. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Jiho could see the clear blue water stretching to the horizon. Tomorrow we will show you our underwater city, said Tae-young. The Confederation has provided special diving suits for your team. Jiho looked at the captain. Actually, he said, some of us might prefer to use our own equipment. Tae-young's head tilted in confusion. Your own equipment? But the pressure at our city's depth would crush your human technology. Not exactly, Jiho explained. Humans have been diving in our oceans for thousands of years. Some of us can hold our breath and dive quite deep with minimal equipment. The Mer's large eyes blinked several times. Hold your breath? You mean without breathing apparatus? Without pressure suits? The other aliens who had gathered around also looked surprised. There was a tall, thin alien with gray skin who seemed especially interested. Yes, said Jiho. It's called free diving. I brought my wetsuit and fins. The depth you mentioned for your city, about 100 meters, is challenging but possible for trained human divers. Tae-young made a sound that might have been a laugh. You must be joking. No land species can just swim down into the depths without technology. The pressure would damage your organs. Captain Do-hyun smiled. Jiho is one of our best divers. Perhaps we could demonstrate tomorrow? I would very much like to see this, said the tall gray alien stepping forward. I am Vor, science officer for the Confederation outpost. If what you say is true, it is most unusual. Word spread quickly through the outpost. By evening, many of the aliens were talking about the strange humans who claimed they could dive without special equipment. Some were curious, some doubtful, and some, like the amphibious Vax delegates, seemed offended by the claim. Jiho met with the other human divers in their quarters that night. There were 5 of them: Jiho, Sujin, the team's best diver, Minho, Hana, and Jun. All had been chosen for the mission partly because of their diving skills. I didn't expect our diving abilities to cause such a stir, said Sujin as she checked her equipment. I've been diving since I was 7 years old. It never seemed special until now. That's because on Earth it's normal, said Jiho. But think about it. Most of these species evolved on land or in shallow waters. The idea of willingly going deep underwater without technology must seem crazy to them. Minho laughed. Wait until they see Sujin dive. She can hold her breath for over 7 minutes and go down to 115 meters. They'll really be shocked then. The next morning, a crowd had gathered at the diving platform. Jiho was surprised to see representatives from at least 8 different species. The mer were there in force, their scales glittering in the morning light. The Vax stood apart, their green skin covered in protective slime. They wore what looked like military uniforms and watched the humans with suspicious eyes. Tae-young approached with an older mer who wore elaborate jewelry made of shells and coral. "This is Elder Sang-min, one of our city leaders. He wished to witness your diving demonstration." The elder studied the humans with curious eyes. "In all my years dealing with space travelers, I have never heard of beings who can withstand the deep without protection. Are you certain this is safe for your kind?" "Completely safe," Soo-jin assured him as she pulled on her wetsuit. "We've trained for this our whole lives." One of the Vax stepped forward. He was taller than the others, with a ridge of spikes along his head. "This is absurd," he said in a harsh voice. "They must have hidden technology. No organic being can adapt to pressure changes so easily." "I assure you we're not hiding anything," said Captain Do-hyun. "Perhaps your species cannot do this, but humans have adapted to diving over many thousands of years." The Vax commander's face darkened with anger. "I am Kai-tek, military advisor to the Vax embassy. My people were swimming the deep oceans when your species was still climbing trees. What you claim is physically impossible." "Then watch," said Soo-jin simply. She finished putting on her fins and adjusted her mask. She wore no air tanks, no pressure suit, just a wetsuit, mask, and fins. A hush fell over the crowd. Jiho felt a surge of pride as Soo-jin walked to the edge of the platform. She took several deep breaths, filling her lungs completely. Then with a final huge breath, she dove into the water with barely a splash. The Confederation had set up underwater cameras to track her descent. The images appeared on a large screen for everyone to see. Soo-jin's form grew smaller as she dove straight down, her body streamlined and efficient. Depth readings flashed on the screen: 20 meters, 40 meters, 60 meters. "Impossible," whispered Ki-tek. Tae-young's eyes were wide with wonder. "How is she not being crushed?" Jiho explained as they watched. "It's called the mammalian dive reflex. When we dive, our bodies automatically adapt. Our heart rate slows down. Blood moves away from our arms and legs and goes to our vital organs. Our spleens release extra oxygen-carrying cells." On the screen, Soo-jin had reached 80 meters and was still going down. The Mer City was visible now, a collection of domed buildings nestled into the side of an underwater cliff. At 100 meters, Soo-jin paused and waved at the Mer who had come out to watch. Then she began her journey back to the surface. 4 minutes underwater so far, noted Minho, looking at his watch. When Soo-jin finally surfaced, 6 minutes and 20 seconds had passed. She climbed back onto the platform, breathing heavily but smiling. The aliens erupted in a mix of amazed sounds, clicks, whistles, and humming. Elder Sang-min approached Soo-jin and bowed deeply. "In all my years, I have never seen anything like this. You honor us with your gift." The Vax commander looked less impressed. "A clever trick," he said, "but it proves nothing. Our diving pods can go 10 times that depth." "Of course they can," said Captain Do-hyun. "With technology, many things are possible. But we do this with just our bodies. That's the point." The science officer Vor was taking readings with a small device. "Fascinating. Your body should have suffered serious damage at that depth, yet you show no signs of injury. This warrants further study." As the crowd dispersed, talking excitedly about what they had seen, Tae-young stayed behind with Jiho. "I have lived my whole life in the ocean," the Mer said quietly, "yet I cannot do what your friend just did. Perhaps there is more that our species can learn from each other than I first thought." Jiho smiled. For the first time since humans had joined the Galactic Confederation, he felt that they had something truly unique to offer. The secret of human diving might seem simple to them, but to the rest of the galaxy, it was nothing short of amazing. 3 days after Soo-jin's amazing dive, the human team had become famous throughout the Confederation outpost on Aquaria. Aliens from all 12 species wanted to meet them and ask questions about human diving abilities. Jiho found it hard to get any work done. As a marine biologist, he had come to study Aquaria's ocean life. Instead, he spent most of his time explaining human physiology to curious aliens. "No, we don't have special organs," he told a group of insect-like krill scientists. "Our bodies just adapt to pressure in ways that yours don't." Captain Do-hyun was pleased with all the attention. This is good for Earth, he told Jiho during a rare quiet moment. For once the other species are seeing us as special, not just as newcomers. That afternoon, Tae-young invited the human team to a formal meeting. Elder Sang-min wishes to discuss a joint research project, the Mer explained as he led them through the floating base. They entered a large room with windows that looked out over the ocean. Elder Sang-min was there, along with several other Mer officials. To Jiho's surprise, Kai-tek and 3 other Vax were also present. "Welcome," said Elder Sang-min. "Please be seated." The humans sat at the round table. Jiho noticed that Ki-tek was watching. Sujin with narrowed eyes. "We have been most impressed by your diving abilities," said the elder. "We believe this skill could be valuable in exploring the deeper parts of our oceans." Captain Do-hyun nodded. "We would be happy to help." "There is a place," continued Sang-min, "called the Great Blue Trench. It is sacred to our people but also dangerous. We have never fully explored its depths." Kai-tek made a harsh sound. "The Vax have explored it thoroughly with our diving pods." Sang-min gave the Vax a patient look. "You have mapped it, yes, but you have not been able to collect the rare blue coral that grows on its walls. Your mechanical pods damage the delicate coral whenever they try to harvest it." "And you think humans could do this?" asked Kai-tek with clear doubt in his voice. "Perhaps," said Sang-min. "With their natural diving ability, they might be able to approach the coral without harming it." Jiho was intrigued. "How deep is this trench?" "The upper levels begin at 200 meters, said Tae-young. "The blue coral grows between 250 and 350 meters depth." Sujin exchanged glances with Jiho. That was beyond the range of even the best human freedivers. The world record was just over 200 meters, and that was under perfect conditions. "That's too deep for unassisted diving," admitted Jiho. "We would need special equipment for those depths." Kai-tek looked pleased. "As I said, this requires proper technology. The Vax will continue our efforts to harvest the coral." Sang-min looked disappointed. "The problem is that your pods have already damaged much of the coral. We need a gentler approach." "Wait," said Sujin suddenly. "We might not be able to freedive that deep, but we could use mixed gas diving. It's still much less invasive than those big pods." Jiho knew what she meant. With special gas mixtures to breathe and minimal equipment, humans could dive much deeper than when simply holding their breath. "Explain," said Sang-min, looking interested. "We use small tanks with special gas mixtures," said Sujin. "Not the big equipment you might be thinking of. We can move more freely than with your diving pods but still reach those depths safely." Kai-tek stood up suddenly. "This is becoming ridiculous. First they claim to dive with no equipment. Now they say they can outperform our best diving technology with small tanks." "We're not claiming we can outperform your pods in terms of depth," said Captain Do-hyun calmly. "But for delicate work like harvesting fragile coral, our divers might have advantages." "Prove it," said Kai-tek. "I challenge your best diver to a competition. My best pilot in a Vax diving pod against your diver with these small tanks you speak of." The room grew quiet. Jiho saw Captain Do-hyun considering the challenge carefully. Such a competition could be risky, but if successful it would further improve Earth's standing in the Confederation. "What would this competition involve?" asked the captain. Elder Sang-min spoke before Ki-tek could answer. "If I may suggest, the goal could be to collect samples of blue coral from the Great Blue Trench without causing damage to the coral beds. The one who collects the most undamaged samples within a set time would be the winner." Ki-tek nodded. "Acceptable. 3 days from now at the Great Blue Trench." All eyes turned to Captain Do-hyun, who looked at Sujin. "What do you think?" "Can we do this?" Sujin thought for a moment. "We'd need to prepare properly. Check our equipment, mix the right gases. But yes, I believe we can." "Then we accept the challenge," said the captain. After the meeting, the human team gathered in their quarters to discuss the competition. "This is a big risk," said Minho. "The Great Blue Trench is much deeper than any of us have dived before." "I've done deep mixed gas diving," said Sujin. "Not to 300 meters, but with the right preparation I can do it." Jiho was worried. "The pressure at that depth is intense. Even with the right gas mix, it's dangerous." "I know," Sujin agreed. "But I also know that Ki-tek doesn't believe we can do it. He's expecting us to fail, and that will make him careless. His pod might be powerful, but it's also big and clumsy. Perfect for mapping a trench, terrible for delicate coral collection." Hana, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. We should focus on safety first. I suggest we ask Tae-young for all the information they have on the trench. Current patterns, temperature changes, everything. Good idea, said Captain Do-hyun. Ji-ho, you work with Tae-young on that. Min-ho and Jun check all our diving equipment. Soo-jin, you focus on planning your dive profile. Hana, research everything we know about this blue coral. The next 2 days were busy with preparations. Tae-young provided detailed maps of the Great Blue Trench and helped them understand the local conditions. The blue coral, it turned out, was not just sacred to the mer but also had special properties that might be useful in medicine. It absorbs and stores oxygen, explained Hana after studying the data. That's why it's blue. It's full of oxygen compounds. That could be useful during the dive, said Soo-jin thoughtfully. On the morning of the competition, a large group gathered at the edge of the platform where a shuttle waited to take them to the Great Blue Trench. News of the challenge had spread, and now representatives from all the Confederation species wanted to watch. The science officer, War, approached Ji-ho as they boarded the shuttle. This competition has created quite a stir, he said. Many are placing bets on the outcome. Betting? Ji-ho was surprised. Who's the favorite? The Vax, of course, said Vor. Their diving pods are well-known technology, but there is significant interest in your human methods. If your diver succeeds, it will change many perceptions. The shuttle took them to a spot in the open ocean where the water was a deeper blue. Floating platforms had been set up for the competition, with underwater cameras to track the divers. The Vax arrived in a sleek vessel. Ki-tek stepped out, followed by a younger Vax who was introduced as Dae-jung, their champion pilot. Soo-jin was already in her wetsuit, checking her small tanks and regulators. She wore a special dive computer on her wrist that would track her depth, time, and gas consumption. Remember, Ji-ho told her quietly. No risks. If anything feels wrong, abort the dive. Soo-jin nodded. I know my limits, but I also know we can win this. Elder Sang-min called everyone together and explained the rules. Each diver will have 1 hour to collect as many samples of blue coral as possible. The coral must be undamaged or it will not count. The competition area has been marked with lights on the trench wall. Dae-jung climbed into his diving pod, a shiny metal sphere with mechanical arms and powerful lights. The pod was lowered into the water with a splash. Soo-jin stepped to the edge of the platform. She looked small and vulnerable compared to the Vax diving pod, with just her wetsuit, fins, and small tanks. She gave a thumbs up to the team, then slipped into the water with barely a ripple. The crowd moved to the screens showing the underwater cameras. Ji-ho watched as Soo-jin began her controlled descent, following a guideline that had been set up for the competition. The Vax pod was already far ahead, its powerful engines taking it quickly toward the bottom. Your diver is too slow, said Ki-tek with a smirk. Our pod will reach the trench first and collect all the best samples. It's not about speed, said Ji-ho. It's about precision. On the screens, they could see that the pod had indeed reached the trench first. It hovered near the wall where the blue coral grew in delicate fans. The mechanical arms reached out to pluck a piece of coral, but the arms were too big and ended up breaking several pieces. Soo-jin was still descending, now at 150 meters. She moved slowly and carefully, letting her body adjust to the increasing pressure. At 200 meters, she paused longer, knowing that the next part of the dive would be the most challenging. Is she in trouble? Asked Tae-young, noticing the pause. No, said Ji-ho. She's being careful. Deep diving requires patience. Meanwhile, the Vax pod was struggling with the coral collection. Each time it tried to grab a piece, it damaged several others. Dae-jung was clearly becoming frustrated, making his movements less precise. Soo-jin finally reached the trench wall at 250 meters. The cameras showed her approaching the coral with slow, deliberate movements. She hovered in front of a large coral fan, studying it carefully. News of Soo-jin's victory at the Great Blue Trench spread quickly through the Galactic Confederation. Within a week, the human team on Aquaria received messages from other Confederation worlds asking about human diving abilities. Some even requested human divers for their own underwater projects. Captain Do-hyun called a meeting in the common room of their quarters. This is an unexpected opportunity, he said. Earth Command wants us to share our knowledge about diving with interested species, but also to be careful. They don't want us to become mere curiosities. What exactly does Earth Command want? Asked Hana. They want us to establish a training program, said the captain. Nothing too advanced, just basic diving techniques that might be useful to other species. Jiho was excited by the idea. Teaching alien species about human diving would be fascinating from a scientific perspective. How would different alien biologies react to underwater pressure? Could they develop the same reflexes that humans had? I'd like to help with that, he said. My background in marine biology could be useful for understanding different species' limitations. Good, said the captain. You'll work with Sujin on developing a basic program. Meanwhile, the Mer have invited us to join a research expedition to study deep-water life forms in the Eastern Sea. Minho, Hana, and Jun will go with them. After the meeting, Jiho and Sujin stayed behind to start planning their training program. We should keep it very simple at first, said Sujin, just getting them comfortable in the water without full pressure suits or breathing apparatus. Jiho agreed. But we need to be careful. What's safe for us might not be for them. We should talk to Vor first. He's been studying our physiology since we arrived. They found the tall gray alien in his lab, examining tissue samples through a complex device. Ah, the diving humans, he said when they entered. I was just studying cells from Sujin's blood. Most remarkable adaptation to pressure changes. That's actually why we're here, said Jiho. We're developing a training program to teach basic diving skills to interested aliens. We need to understand what might be safe for different species. Vor's long fingers tapped on his console, bringing up images of different alien anatomies. Most Confederation species evolved on land or in very shallow waters, he explained. The Vax are partly amphibious but adapted for swamps, not deep oceans. The krill come from a low-gravity world and would be crushed by your ocean pressures. The Mer, of course, are fully adapted to water. So who might safely learn basic diving? Asked Sujin. The Fan might be your best candidates, said Vor, showing an image of a stocky, furry creature. They evolved in high-pressure caverns on their homeworld. Their bodies already handle pressure changes well, though they are not adapted for water. Jiho made notes as Vor continued describing various species. By the time they left the lab, they had a list of 5 species that might safely try simplified human diving techniques. Over the next few days, they set up a training pool on the floating platform. Several aliens signed up for the first class, including 2 Fan, a Mer scientist who wanted to understand human methods, and unexpectedly, a young Vax named Junho. I'm surprised to see a Vax here, Sujin said quietly to Jiho as their students arrived, especially after the competition. Maybe not all Vax share Kitek's views, replied Jiho. The first lesson focused on breathing control and relaxation in the water. Jiho was fascinated by how differently each species approached the water. The Fan were nervous but determined. The Mer, already comfortable in water, struggled to understand why breathing control was important. The young Vax, Junho, was surprisingly good at holding his breath. After the class, Junho approached Jiho. The techniques you teach are interesting, he said. His voice was less harsh than Kitek's. They remind me of ancient Vax meditation practices that have been mostly forgotten. Really? Jiho was intrigued. Perhaps there are connections between our species that we haven't discovered yet. Junho seemed about to say more when a shadow fell across them. Kitek stood there looking angry. What are you doing here, youngling? He demanded of Junho. Learning, replied the younger Vax calmly. These human methods are interesting. Kitek made a dismissive gesture. Primitive techniques for a primitive species. You waste your time. With respect, Elder, said Junho, I disagree. There is wisdom in their approach. Kitek's face darkened. You forget your place. Return to our quarters immediately. Junho bowed slightly and left without another word. Kitek turned to Jiho. Stay away from our young ones, he warned. We don't need your backward ideas. After Kitek left, Sujin joined Jiho. What was that about? I'm not sure, said Jiho, but I think there might be more to the Vax than we've seen so far. Junho mentioned ancient practices similar to our diving techniques. Interesting, said Sujin. Maybe Kitek feels threatened by that connection. The next day, Tae-young brought news that changed everything. The Mer Science Council has approved a major expedition, he told the human team excitedly. They want to explore the deepest part of the Great Blue Trench, an area we call the Heart of Darkness. How deep is it? Asked Jiho. Nearly 800 meters, said Tae-young. No Mer has ever been that deep, even with technology. But the Council believes that with your help we might succeed. Captain Do-hyun looked concerned. That's far beyond safe limits for our diving techniques. Even with special gas mixtures, humans can't safely dive that deep without very advanced equipment. We understand, said Tae-young. We're not asking your divers to go all the way down, but your experience with pressure changes might help us design better vehicles for the expedition, and perhaps your divers could accompany us to the shallower parts. The captain thought for a moment. We'll need to discuss this with Earth Command, but I think they'll approve. This kind of cooperation is exactly what they want. The next weeks were busy with preparation for the expedition. Ji-ho worked with MER scientists to design diving vehicles that combined MER technology with human insights about pressure adaptation. Soo-jin continued the diving classes, and to everyone's surprise, Junho kept attending despite Ki-tek's disapproval. One evening, as Ji-ho was reviewing designs in the lab, Junho appeared at the door. "May I speak with you?" the young Vax asked. "Of course," said Ji-ho. "What's on your mind?" "I have been studying your diving techniques," said Junho. "There are scrolls in our historical archives that describe similar methods used by ancient Vax before we developed our modern technology. That's fascinating," said Ji-ho. "Were your ancestors deep divers too?" "Yes," said Junho, "but that knowledge has been lost. Our leaders, like Ki-tek, believe that technology is the only path forward. They see returning to old ways as moving backward." "But you disagree?" Junho's webbed fingers touched the designs on Ji-ho's screen. "I believe there is wisdom in both approaches. Your victory in the Coral Collection showed that clearly." Before Ji-ho could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the base. "Red lights flashed in the corridors. What's happening?" asked Junho, looking alarmed. Ji-ho's communication device buzzed. It was Captain Do-hyun. "Ji-ho, get to the main platform immediately. There's been an accident." When Ji-ho arrived at the platform, he found chaos. A crowd had gathered around a MER who lay on the ground, his scales dull and his breathing labored. Tae-young knelt beside him, looking worried. "What happened?" Ji-ho asked Soo-jin, who stood nearby. "It's Elder Sang-min's son, Dong-hyuk," she said quietly. "He took one of the new prototype diving vehicles to test it. Something went wrong at depth. He managed to get back to the surface, but he's suffering from severe pressure sickness." The MER doctors were working frantically, but it was clear they were struggling. Ji-ho pushed forward. "I might be able to help," he said to Tae-young. "On Earth we have treatments for decompression sickness." Tae-young looked up, hope in his large eyes. "Please, anything you can do." Ji-ho examined Dong-hyuk quickly. The symptoms were similar to what humans called the benzone, a dangerous condition, caused by nitrogen bubbles forming in the blood. During too rapid ascent from depth, we need a hyperbaric chamber, said Ji-ho. A pressurized space where we can simulate depth and then slowly bring him back to surface pressure. We have nothing like that, said Tae-young desperately. Then we'll make one, said Ji-ho. He turned to the captain. The shuttle has a section that can be sealed and pressurized, right? Captain Do-hyun nodded. Yes, the cargo bay. But can it be adapted quickly enough? It has to be, said Ji-ho. He turned to the aliens around him. I need engineers, medical equipment, and oxygen tanks. Now, the next hours were a blur of activity. Confederation engineers worked to modify the shuttle's cargo bay, while Ji-ho and Soo-jin prepared the treatment protocol. Junho surprised everyone by offering Vax medical technology that could help monitor Dong-hyuk's condition. Ki-tek appeared as they were transferring Dong-hyuk to the makeshift chamber. What is happening here? He demanded. We're trying to save his life, said Ji-ho, not pausing in his work. Ki-tek watched for a moment, then unexpectedly offered, The Vax have pressure regulation technology that might help. I will have it brought immediately. With the combined efforts of humans, Vax, and other species, they managed to create a working hyperbaric chamber. 2 months after Dong-hyuk's accident, the Great Blue Trench expedition was finally ready to launch. The delay had actually been beneficial, giving the team time to improve their equipment and build stronger relationships between the species. Ki-tek had become an unexpected ally. After sharing ancient Vax diving knowledge, he had worked closely with Ji-ho and the MER engineers to create a new type of diving vehicle. It combined the best of Vax technology with insights from human diving physiology and MER underwater navigation. We call it the Harmony Pod, Ki-tek told the gathered team on the morning of the launch, because it represents harmony between our 3 species. The pod was smaller and more flexible than traditional VAX vehicles. It had transparent sections that gave better visibility and specialized arms that could move with almost human-like precision. Most importantly, it could withstand the crushing pressure of the deepest part of the Great Blue Trench. Captain Do-hyun addressed the expedition team. Today marks a historic moment of cooperation. Humans, Mer, and Vax working together to explore one of the greatest mysteries of Aquaria. Elder Sang-min, who had insisted on joining the expedition despite his age, added, "The heart of darkness has been sacred to my people for generations. We believed it held secrets meant only for those worthy to discover them. Perhaps that is why it took the combined wisdom of 3 worlds to reach it." The expedition consisted of 3 Harmony pods. The first would be piloted by Kai-Tek, with Ji-ho as his human advisor. The second would be piloted by Tae-young, with Soo-jin alongside him. The third would carry Elder Sang-min and his now-recovered son, Dong-hyuk. As they prepared to depart, Vor approached Ji-ho. The science officer looked even more serious than usual. "I have been analyzing data from preliminary scans of the trench," he said quietly. "There are unusual energy readings from the deepest point, the heart of darkness as the Mer call it." "What kind of energy?" asked Ji-ho. "Unknown," said Vor, "but it appears to pulse in a regular pattern. It could be geological or what?" Vor hesitated. "Or it could be artificial." Ji-ho was stunned. "You mean made by intelligent beings? But the Mer say no one has ever reached those depths." "No Mer has," corrected Vor. "That does not mean others have not. Be careful, Ji-ho, and report anything unusual immediately." With that cryptic warning, Vor left. Ji-ho wanted to tell Captain Do-hyun about the conversation, but it was too late. The expedition was already moving to the launch platform. The 3 Harmony pods were lowered into the water, their sleek forms disappearing beneath the surface. Ji-ho sat beside Kai-Tek in the lead pod, watching through the transparent dome as they descended into the blue depths. "Nervous, human?" asked Kai-Tek, noticing Ji-ho's tense posture. "A little," admitted Ji-ho. "This is deeper than I've ever been." Kai-Tek's expression softened slightly. "You are safe in this pod. It incorporates the best of Vax engineering. And human insights," added Ji-ho with a smile. Kai-Tek nodded. "Yes, I have learned that there is value in your natural approach." They descended in silence for a while, watching as the water grew darker around them. Lights from the pod illuminated strange fish and floating creatures that scattered away from the unfamiliar intruders. At 500 meters, they reached the upper edge of the Great Blue Trench. It was like a massive wound in the ocean floor, a great dark gash that seemed to go down forever. "Beginning descent into the trench," reported Kai-Tek into the communication. "System, we're right behind you," came Soo-jin's voice from the second pod. "Proceed with caution," added Elder Sang-min from the third. The pods moved slowly down the wall of the trench. At 600 meters, they passed the deepest point reached by previous Mer expeditions. Everything beyond was unknown territory. "Look at that," said Ji-ho, pointing to a cluster of strange glowing plants growing from the rock wall. "Those plants are bioluminescent, but I've never seen that pattern before." Kai-Tek adjusted their course to get a better view. The glowing dots seemed to form patterns, almost like writing. Ji-ho took images with the pod's camera system. "We'll analyze them later. For now, let's continue down." At 700 meters, the water pressure outside the pod was intense. Ji-ho could hear the Harmony pod's structure creaking slightly as it adjusted to the increasing force. "Hull integrity at 92%, reported Kai-Tek, checking the displays. "Still well within safe limits." "We're maintaining position at 700 meters, came Tae-young's voice from the second pod. "Elder Sang-min wishes to perform a traditional Mer blessing before we continue to the heart of darkness." "Understood," said Kai-Tek. "We will wait." While they hovered, Ji-ho studied the strange rock formations of the trench. Something about them seemed oddly regular, with too many straight lines and perfect angles to be natural. "Kai-Tek," he said slowly, "have you noticed the rock structures here? They almost look constructed." The Vax frowned and looked more carefully. "You may be right, but who could build at these depths?" Before Ji-ho could respond, a message came through from the third pod. "Blessing complete," said Dong-hyuk. "We're ready to proceed." The 3 pods continued their descent. As they passed 750 meters, Their lights revealed a large, flat area at the bottom of the trench. In the center was a perfect circle of what looked like smooth black stone. "The heart of darkness," whispered Kai-Tek. "All pods, hold position," came Elder Sangmin's voice. "There is something unusual about this place." Jiho felt a strange sensation, a kind of pressure in his head that had nothing to do with the ocean depth. "Do you feel that?" he asked Kai-Tek. The Vax nodded, looking uncomfortable. "Like something pressing against my mind." Suddenly, the black circle at the center of the heart began to glow with a soft blue light. The light pulsed in a steady rhythm. "That must be the energy signature Vor detected," said Jiho. He checked their instruments. "But I'm not reading any actual energy output. It's like the light isn't really there." "All pods pull back," ordered Elder Sangmin. "Something is happening." But before they could move, the blue light expanded rapidly, engulfing all 3 pods in its glow. Jiho felt the pressure in his head increase until it was almost painful. Then suddenly the light was gone, and so was the water. Jiho blinked in confusion. The Harmony pod now sat on dry ground, inside what appeared to be a massive domed chamber. The other 2 pods were nearby, their occupants looking as bewildered as Jiho felt. "What happened?" asked Kai-Tek, his voice tight with tension. "Where is the ocean?" Jiho checked the external sensors. "We're still at the same depth, but somehow the water has been removed from this area. There's breathable air outside the pod." "That's impossible," said Kai-Tek. "Pod 3, are you seeing this?" Jiho called over the communication system. "Yes," replied Dong-hyuk. "Elder Sangmin says this confirms the ancient Mare legends. The Heart of Darkness was said to contain a chamber of air where the Old Ones once dwelled. We should investigate," said Sujin's voice from Pod 2. "Our suits can handle the pressure even outside the us." After some discussion, they agreed to exit the pods together. Jiho, Sujin, Ki-Tek, Tae-young, Elder Sangmin, and Dong-hyuk gathered on the smooth black floor of the chamber, still wearing their pressure suits as a precaution. The space was enormous, at least 100 meters across, with a domed ceiling that glowed with the same soft blue light they had seen earlier. The walls were covered in intricate patterns that reminded Jiho of circuit boards, but made of some unknown material. "This is clearly artificial," said Jiho, his voice filled with awe. "But who built it? And how long has it been here?" Elder Sangmin ran his webbed hand over one of the wall patterns. "The legends say the Old Ones came from the stars before the Mer had evolved intelligence. They lived in the depths and taught the early Mer many things. An ancient alien base," whispered Sujin. "This could change everything we know about Aquaria's history." As they explored further, they discovered a central platform in the middle of the chamber. It was a raised circular area with a console of some kind, covered in symbols none of them recognized. "Should we touch it?" asked Dong-hyuk, looking to his father for guidance. Before Elder Sangmin could answer, the console lit up on its own. A holographic image appeared above it, a 3-dimensional map of what looked like the galaxy. Certain stars were highlighted in the same blue glow as the chamber. "It's activated by our presence," said Jiho. "It must have some kind of sensor system." The hologram shifted, zooming in on one particular star system, one with a familiar blue planet. "That's Aquaria," said Tae-young. "This is a map showing where we are." The map zoomed out again, then traced a path between several of the glowing stars, ending at a star that none of them recognized. "A navigation chart?" suggested Kai-Tek. "Perhaps showing the route the Old Ones took to reach Aquaria. Or where they went when they left," added Jiho. Elder Sangmin stepped closer to the console. "The legends say the Old Ones promised to return one day, when the children of Aquaria were ready to join them among the stars. But the Mer already travel in space," said Sujin. "You've joined the Confederation?" "Yes," said Elder Sangmin. "But perhaps they were waiting for something more. For the children of Aquaria to find this place together." He gestured at their group, Mer, human, and Vax, standing side by side. As if responding to his words, the hologram changed again. Now it showed 3 distinct figures, one clearly. 6 months after the discovery in the Heart of Darkness, the floating platform on Aquaria had transformed. What began as a simple Confederation outpost was now a thriving center for interspecies cooperation. New buildings had been added to accommodate the growing number of aliens who came to learn from the unique partnership of humans. Mir and Vax Jiho stood at the edge of the platform, watching a training session in the water below. Sujin was teaching a mixed group of aliens the basics of freediving. Among her students were representatives from species that had previously shown no interest in ocean exploration. Amazing progress, said Captain Do-hyun, joining Ji-ho at the railing. When we first arrived, they thought human diving was primitive. Now they're lining up to learn. It's not just about the diving anymore, said Ji-ho. It's about what it represents, working with our natural abilities, instead of always relying on technology. The captain nodded. Earth Command is pleased. Our status in the Confederation has improved dramatically. We're no longer seen as the newcomers with nothing to offer. This was an understatement. Since the expedition to the Great Blue Trench, Earth had received 17 requests for human diving experts to assist with projects on other worlds. The knowledge from the old ones had been shared throughout the Confederation, leading to breakthroughs in medicine, environmental science, and energy production. Speaking of progress, said the captain, the Confederation Council has approved the Joint Research Facility. Construction begins next month. This was the project Ji-ho had been most excited about, a permanent underwater research center where humans, Mir, and Vax would work together to develop new technologies based on the old one's knowledge. Will you be staying on as lead researcher? Asked the captain. Ji-ho smiled. Wild horses couldn't drag me away. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. Later that day, Ji-ho met with Ki-tek and Tae-young to review the final designs for the research facility. The three had become an effective team, each bringing different perspectives to their work. The central dome should be larger, said Ki-tek, pointing to the holographic display. We will need more space for the pressure testing chamber. And the connection to the deep water channel needs to be reinforced, added Tae-young. The currents are stronger than our initial readings suggested. Ji-ho made notes on his tablet. What about the training area? Should we expand it to accommodate more students? Definitely, said Tae-young. The waiting list grows longer every day. They continued working until evening when Elder Sang-min called them to a special ceremony. The old Mer had become something of a spiritual leader for the project, his wisdom respected by all species. The ceremony was held in the large meeting hall that had been built in the center of the platform. Representatives from 27 Confederation species had gathered, including the Confederation High Council itself. Elder Sang-min stood in the center of the room, flanked by his son Dong-hyuk and several other Mer elders. As Ji-ho, Ki-tek, and Tae-young entered, the crowd parted to let them through. Come forward, friends, said Elder Sang-min, his voice carrying clearly despite his age. Today we honor the spirit of cooperation that has brought us all together. The three approached and stood before the elder. Ji-ho noticed that Sujin, Minho, Hana, and Jun were also being led to the front by other Mer. 6 months ago, continued Sang-min, 3 species journeyed together into the heart of darkness. They returned with knowledge that has benefited all our worlds, but more importantly, they returned with a new understanding of what we can achieve when we combine our different strengths. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Ji-ho saw representatives from species that had traditionally been rivals standing side by side, united by the shared benefits of the old one's knowledge. The humans taught us that sometimes the simplest approach is the most profound, said Sang-min. Their ability to dive into our oceans with minimal technology seemed primitive at first. Now we understand it as a powerful symbol of adaptation and harmony with nature. The elder turned to face the entire gathering. In honor of this lesson, the Mer people wish to share a secret of our own, one we have guarded for generations. This announcement caused a stir. The Mer were known for their openness, not for keeping secrets. Long ago, when our ancestors first gained intelligence, they discovered certain plants in the deep ocean that enhanced their mental abilities. These plants, which we call breath of the deep, allowed them to communicate across great distances and even to sense the emotions of others. We have cultivated these plants in secret, fearing they might be misused by those who do not understand their power. Elder Sang-min gestured to several younger Mer, who brought forward what looked like small blue-green orbs floating in water-filled containers. These are seeds of the breath of the deep. We offer them now to the Confederation, to be studied and shared for the benefit of all. Just as the humans shared their diving secret, we share this gift. The High Counselor of the Confederation, a tall being with crystalline features, stepped forward to accept the gift. The Confederation thanks the Mer people for their trust and generosity. This exchange of knowledge embodies the highest ideals of our union. The counselor then turned to Jiho and the other humans, and to the people of Earth. We extend our deepest appreciation. Your unique abilities have reminded us all that there are many paths to wisdom, and that even the youngest species can offer profound insights to the oldest. After the ceremony, a celebration began. Music from a dozen worlds filled the air as species that had once been strangers now mingled like old friends. Jiho found himself surrounded by aliens asking about Earth and human diving techniques. "Is it true that human children can learn to dive before they learn to read?" asked a curious krill scientist. "Some can," Jiho confirmed. "In certain coastal cultures on Earth, children start learning to free dive as young as 5 or 6 years old." "Fascinating," said the krill. "My species fears water instinctively. The idea of willingly submersing oneself is terrifying to us. Yet after seeing what you've accomplished, several of my colleagues have begun water adaptation therapy." As the evening progressed, Jiho noticed Sujin deep in conversation with Kai-Tek and several other Vax. The once hostile Kai-Tek now seemed completely at ease with humans, even laughing at something Sujin had said. "Quite a change, isn't it?" said Vor, appearing at Jiho's side. The science officer looked pleased. "It's hard to believe this is the same Kai-Tek who challenged us to a diving competition 6 months ago," agreed Jiho. "The Vax are traditionally slow to trust outsiders," said Vor. "But once their trust is earned, they are steadfast allies. You have done what no other species managed in 50 years of Confederation membership. You've made friends of the Vax." Jiho thought about this. It wasn't just us. It was the shared experience in the heart of darkness. Facing that mystery together changed something. "Perhaps," said Vor thoughtfully, "or perhaps it was simply that you showed them a different way of thinking. The Vax pride themselves on their technology, yet you accomplished with your natural abilities what their machines could not. It forced them to reconsider their assumptions." Later, as the celebration continued, Jiho stepped outside for a moment of quiet. The moons of Aquaria cast silver light across the endless ocean, making it look like a field of stars had fallen to Earth. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said a voice behind him. Jiho turned to see Junho, the young Vax who had first shown interest in human diving techniques. In the months since the expedition, Junho had become one of the most enthusiastic promoters of interspecies cooperation. "Reminds me of home," said Jiho. "I grew up near the ocean on Earth." "I've been studying Earth's oceans," said Junho. "They're different from ours, smaller but more diverse. I hope to visit them someday." "You'd be welcome," said Jiho. "In fact, there's talk of a cultural exchange program. Some Mer and Vax might go to Earth while more humans would come here." Junho's eyes brightened. "I would volunteer immediately." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the play of moonlight on water. "Have you heard the news?" asked Junho finally. "The Vax Council has approved the revival of our ancient diving practices." Jiho was surprised. Really, Kai-Tek didn't mention it. It was just decided yesterday. Kai-Tek presented the proposal himself, arguing that we had become too dependent on our technology. He said watching humans dive reminded him of stories his grandmother told about the old ways. "That's a big change for Kai-Tek." Junho nodded. "He's changed a lot since the expedition." "Many of us have. We're beginning to remember that technology should serve life, not replace it." Their conversation was interrupted by Captain Do-hyun, who came looking for Jiho. "There you are," he said. "The High Counselor wants to speak with you and the other expedition members." Jiho and Junho returned to the celebration, where they found the High Counselor waiting with Elder Sang-min, Kai-Tek, and the rest of the human team. "I have an announcement," said the counselor when they were all gathered. "In recognition of the remarkable achievements here on Aquaria, the Confederation Council has approved the establishment of a new division, the Interspecies Adaptation Research Team. We would like all of you to serve as its founding members."